it's the best school I've ever had for like controlling your ego. I mean,
Yeah.
it truly is, where it's like you never get too far ahead of yourself, and you never just coast. It's
Yeah.
never either of those. So, you know, it's like I would come in one week being like, "Oh, this motherfucker got all these sketches on last week," and I would have to shut myself up. I'd have to be like, "Shut up. Do you want to get better this week or not?" Like, because you're not going to get better thinking about what this other person got on and what you didn't get on. So it was a lot of that.
Yeah, it's funny for the writers at least, it's all this sort of internal drama because the viewers, we don't know who wrote what sketches for the most part. Every once in a while, sort of it'll, come out
Yeah,
that somebody wrote certain sketch that did really well or whatever, but like I have no idea what sketches you've written over the course of the show. So you don't
right.
get credit. You also don't get sort of blame if something doesn't go well or doesn't go as planned. How do you feel about that? Because it's different than most other parts of show business, I guess, in that way, is like you're in this really high profile position, but we don't really know what you're doing.
Well, there's two different. It's funny because I've been in two different positions now at SNL as a writer. The first 3 years I was there was as a sketch writer, and you do get blame if your sketch doesn't go well. Like people are less willing to give you a shot the next week if your
Right.
sketch last week bombed. So yes, it's you're not getting blame from like
Critics
public,
or
you
yeah.
know, but internally you're like, well, this kind of fucks my chances for this week. Now, as an update writer, it's a completely different game,
And that's where are
and
you focusing entirely on Weekend Update now?
it's two different teams. So you have the sketch writers on their one writing staff, and the update writers are a different writing staff, and it's much smaller. And this year I'm on the update squad. So that's like update is in a lot of ways more during the week it's much more isolating, where it's just you and your computer and a bunch of headlines. And then Friday comes along and all the jokes get picked that are going to go on the show, and Saturday morning that whittles down even more. And then we're just tagging each other's jokes and tagging things. So it's like it's you're working entirely by yourself Monday through Thursday and most of Friday. But by Friday and Saturday, it's like it doesn't matter. Nobody knows whose jokes are getting picked, and you're
Yeah.
just tagging each other's jokes. So to me it's like it's way less of a, you know, if I have a joke that bombs on update, it's not like I'm not going to get a joke picked next week, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um so it feels like a totally different game, and it's a lot as a stand up, it's much more it's closer to like what I'm used to and the way that my
Hmm.
brain works. So I'm a lot more comfortable in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think it must be a challenge to write for a Weekend Update that this show that comes on at the weekend after all of the late night shows have kind of had their crack at the news
Yeah.
of the week.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys think about in terms of,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
not wanting to repeat things, obviously, and wanting to have your own take on things? So how do you go about that?
For sure. Well, we check out, we do watch the monologues, and we get the monologues from other late night shows. So we know what's been covered. So if we're going to cover it, we have to make sure that it's a new angle on it. Um, and it's really helpful to just watch those monologues and see what direction Seth took it in, or what direction um, Fallon took it in, and do something different with it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's also like I didn't really expect the amount of research that I would have to do as an update writer.
A lot of a lot of following the news.
A lot of, I mean, obviously following the news, but also just like checking to see whether your gut reaction to the news is warranted
Mm.
and if it actually is connected to facts. And that part of it is really, that was surprising to me because, you know, it does make sense. I mean, for a premise to work, it has to be true. So you can't really misdirect from a premise that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really difficult to find out what is true nowadays.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. Um, what have you learned about sort of what makes a really successful Weekend Update joke that really lands with the live audience?
What have I learned? What do you
Yeah,
mean?
sort of like what makes a great Weekend Update joke for you that just in your experience in terms of something that you've maybe there's an example of something you've written or just something that um you felt like you were
I
really
mean,
proud of or that went
it could
well
be
or
like a great misdirect, or it could be like just uh a really short punchline that is performed really well, like with a big swing.
hmm
Um, you know, uh I, there's a joke that is coming to me that's not my joke. It was Josh Patton's joke, and it was so funny and just the most, I mean, in terms of punchline brevity, was just the best I've ever seen. Um, but it was Colin reading that there was a study that came out that people that eat oatmeal for breakfast every day will live longer. And then the punchline was just no. and,
yeah, that
and
was great.
the way Colin did it was like so perfect. And all of us at the table on Friday night, Colin was reading it and he just read it with so much like he just like banged on the table and we were all exhausted. It was like 2 in the morning and we were dying. We were dying
Yeah.
laughing. Um, so like that's one that I can say, you know, that could have easily not done well if it hadn't been performed the way
hmm
Colin did it. You know, there's other ones where it's like I'm trying to think. There was like it was a study that men would be extinct in the next like million years or something. And it was I had written it for Che and it was like, okay, so men are gonna go extinct. And then he was like, so don't worry, ladies, you'll get your little president. And it was like, it was like a fun, just kind of misdirect.
hmm
You know, I don't really know. You never really know until something is performed in front of a live audience if it's going to get a laugh.
Yeah. I feel
And
like yeah, I feel like Colin Jost and Michael Che are so much more like have become characters on the show in a way maybe even previous Weekend Update hosts played it much more like we're fake news anchors and this is much more sort of like
yeah,
straight news. So I that must be sort of part of the fun too is playing into these personas that they've built up over many years now.
yeah, I think they've built up so much goodwill with the audience that they can afford to say something that might make them a little less likable,
Yeah.
and
Get
have
some
fun with
groans
it
every
like
once in a
that.
while.
Yeah, and I think in that way, I think Colin and Che have really done a great job of like almost getting a stand-ups persona from the desk,
hmm
um, or getting their stand-up voices out from behind the desk. It doesn't feel like someone playing at the news as much as like two guys telling jokes and about the news, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Have you enjoyed writing for them more than maybe writing for whoever the host happens to be that week that you have to come up with sketch ideas for?
Yes, I have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, on the one hand, it is just something that I'm better at. Like
Hmm.
I'm just better at doing that. And I do miss aspects of writing sketches for hosts. I miss like the production aspect of it. I loved like as a writer being able to produce your sketch was really fun and really exciting. And um the variety of the schedule was something that I miss sometimes. But I really am I really am happy like sitting in front of a computer and writing jokes. I That's on a base level, I am happier doing that. So I have no complaints. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like that bit of crowd work or stand up that you did about Travis Kelce's experience at the show that kind of went a little viral. Was that an example of maybe something you should have kept your mouth shut about?
Um Maybe, I don't know. I haven't heard anything from the show about it, but I also did get moved to update. So maybe I am in trouble for that.
I know that was I think that was
I
pre
don't
Taylor Swift, so that was like he was a much smaller celebrity at that point.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that it went viral, but I was like I think people got really offended when really what I was saying was that I thought it was really cute that he was like practicing his lines. And I don't, I still am like, I think they thought I was calling him dumb or that they thought I don't know. But I was like, whatever. When something goes viral at this point, you're like, the comments are none of my business. Just do your thing, internet.